one who slipped in and out of rooms without anyone noticing, my achievements buried under stacks of Avery's glitter. One Thanksgiving is burned into me. The table groaned with turkey and casseroles, laughter booming as Avery told stories of penthouses and designer bags. I cleared my throat, mentioned I had been awarded a Marine commendation. My father gave me a distracted smile and pivoted instantly back to Avery. "Tell us again about that view in New York." The applause that followed wasn't for me. It never was. I chewed slowly, pretending not to care. But inside I was folding myself smaller and smaller. Even my mother, glass of wine in hand, chuckled to her friends. "Morgan's so serious, almost like a boy. Avery, now she's our real girl." The words stung. Though I kept my face still, silence became my shield. But behind it grew a raw ache, a quiet fury that hardened with every shrug, every dismissal. In that house, Avery was the golden child, and I was a shadow on the wall, years later, at a wine bar in Napa. Avery lifted her hand into the spotlight. The diamond on her finger was massive, refracting flashes of light that had the guests murmuring, "He's like royalty. She's marrying up." Dmitry Koval, older, wealthy, polished, stood beside her like a prize she had earned. My parents glowed as if her engagement crowned all their sacrifices. But as the ring caught the chandelier's gleam, my stomach tightened. I had seen those numbers before. The LLC in Delaware, the trail of offshore accounts, the same shadows traced in my intel reports on weapons trafficking. What Avery flaunted as status was, to me, a flashing red flag. That night, the phone rang. My mother's voice softened into the plea I knew too well. "Morgan, please, don't make things difficult. Just smile. Let your sister shine." She didn't ask how I was. She didn't care what I knew. She only wanted harmony at the table, even if it was built on rot. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles whitened. Words crowded my throat, truths I had stitched together from months of analysis. I wanted to scream them, to rip away the illusion. Instead, I swallowed hard and let silence answer. When the call ended, I sat in the dark, heart hammering. In that silence, a decision took shape. If my family chose image over justice, then I would choose justice, even if it meant tearing their perfect wedding apart. The next morning, I walked into NCIS with a plan burning in my mind. The conference room at NCIS San Diego buzzed with low voices and the glow of maps tacked to the wall. Arrows and shipping lines stretched from California across the Atlantic, converging on ports I knew too well. I stepped to the front, papers in hand, the weight of my plan pressing down like body armor. "This wedding," I began, pointing to Napa Valley on the board, "isn't just a family affair, it's the perfect gathering point. Every key player in Dmitry Koval's network will be there. Relaxed, arrogant, convinced they're untouchable, and I'm the one person they'll never suspect." For a beat, the room was silent. Then my Marine superior, the staff judge advocate, cut in. "Captain Hale, you are liaison only. You don't get to run this like combat. Civilian authorities lead. You support." His warning stung, a reminder that even in the fight I had built, my authority had limits. The district attorney from Napa leaned back, skeptical. "Without a warrant, we've got nothing but smoke. You want us to crash a wedding? Prove it. Show us the money trail." I slid forward the diagrams I'd spent sleepless nights piecing together. Offshore transfers, shell companies, a Delaware LLC that paid for the diamond ring Avery was flaunting. The numbers spoke for me. After a tense pause, the DA exhaled, tapped his pen, and finally said, "Warrant granted." Later, in the quiet of my quarters, an agent handed me the final piece, a microtransmitter disguised as a silver dog tag. When I clasped it around my neck, the metal was cold against my skin, a chill that carried both the pride of the Corps and the ache of my family's betrayal. The conflict sharpened in my chest. I wasn't just risking a mission, I was about to put my sister's wedding, the crown jewel of my parents' dreams, directly in the crosshairs. The private dining room sparkled with satin drapes and too much champagne. Avery stood at the center in a blush satin dress, glass raised, her friends orbiting her like planets around a sun. I lingered near the edge, a glass of water in my hand, a prop to keep me occupied. She caught my eye, smirked, and lifted her voice just enough for the whole table to hear. "My sister, Morgan, nobody all her life, finally useful for once in a bridesmaid's dress." The laughter that followed hit harder than any blow I'd taken in training. I forced a smile, swallowing the sting, but inside it burned like acid. When the shower ended, I slipped into the cool night air, grateful for the silence of the parking lot. That's when a man brushed past me, sliding an envelope into my hand so discreetly it looked like nothing more than a casual touch. "Be careful," he murmured. "Not everyone here is here to celebrate." By the time I turned, he was gone. Inside the envelope was a card, an invitation to an after-party on a hilltop estate I knew doubled as a storage site. My pulse quickened. The next morning, digging deeper, I found something worse. My father had signed papers tying our family home to a so-called winery investment. In truth, he had been drawn straight into Dimitri's laundering scheme without realizing it. I sat with the card in my hand, staring at the embossed address. That hill wasn't just a party spot, it was a vault. And my family, blind in their devotion to Avery's fairy tale, had already set their future on fire. If I stayed silent, they wouldn't just lose their illusions, they'd lose the roof over their heads. I slipped into the role of dutiful bridesmaid, clipboard in hand, trailing Avery and Carmen as if all I cared about were flowers and fabric. Avery beamed, pointing to rows of white roses as if each bloom carried her signature charm. I nodded, but my eyes stayed sharp, mapping every door, exit, and parking bay as though the vineyard were a battlefield. From the corner of my vision, I caught Carmen pause near the audio crew. One of them handed her a thick envelope. Her smile faltered for half a second. The kind of flicker you learn to watch for in interrogation rooms. She tucked it quickly into her bag, but not before I saw the weight drag on her arm. Later, while Avery fussed over table linens, I drifted toward the sound equipment, running my hand across one of the black speaker cabinets. I felt a seam that didn't belong, a false bottom. I crouched, tapped it with my nail, and knew. Hidden inside was just the right space for a portable hard drive. A ledger. Proof that Dimitri's empire wasn't just rumor, it was right here, pulsing at the heart of my sister's dream day. I stood, face neutral, lips curved in polite agreement as Avery gushed about flower arrangements. But beneath my calm, my pulse pounded in my ears. Carmen wasn't clean. Desperation had chained her to Dimitri's money. And now, the wedding wasn't just a stage. It was the courier. The ledger inside that speaker could tear down the entire network if I played this right. The night before the wedding, everything shifted. A text from Avery. Schedule moved up, ceremony an hour earlier. Almost immediately, I learned the vineyard's private security had swapped shifts. Faces I'd watched for days vanished, replaced by men I didn't recognize. My gut tightened. I sat in my rental car, headlights off, watching the golden glow spill across stacked wine barrels. The vineyard should have felt serene, but the silence carried a hum of dread. Then the call came in. One of our undercover agents in Sonoma had been burned, barely escaping with his life. The message was clear. Someone in Dimitri's circle knew the walls were closing in. Scrolling through my notes, I saw the pattern. The after-party, tucked away in the hilltop estate, wasn't an indulgence. It was the real deal table, the signing ground where Dimitri's associates would greenlight the Oakland shipment. The wedding was the smoke. The fire waited in the hills. A shuffle of gravel made me stiffen. The man from the bridal shower parking lot appeared in the beam of my dashboard light. My hand brushed the holster at my hip until he raised his palm. "Relax," he whispered, flashing a badge from Napa PD. "We've been testing you. Needed to know if you were family first, Law second. I leaned out the window, lowering my voice. I've got the ledger. Dimitri's using the after-party to move forward. His jaw set. Then we're on the same side. As he melted back into the shadows, the truth hit me like a cold wave. Dimitri's network was spooked, the timeline scrambled, and my family's perfect day was hanging by a thread. One wrong step now. And they wouldn't just lose their illusions. They'd be shackled to an international scandal that would never let them go. The vineyard glittered as if it had been painted for a dream. Fairy lights draped over trellises, their glow softened by the dark sweep of grapevines. The quartet's violins floated across the ballroom, measured and elegant, wrapping the night in a shimmer of old-world grace. Guests in silk and tuxedos swayed together on the dance floor, champagne flutes in hand. While I lingered at the edge, every sense sharpened. Avery glided past in her gown, a vision of triumph, a smile sculpted for cameras and admiration. She leaned close as she spun with Dimitri, her perfume sharp, her words sharper. "You're still nobody here, Morgan!" Her voice was silk, folded around steel. Each syllable meant to cut. Dimitri's lips curled into a smirk, as if to stamp her cruelty with approval. It landed like a final verdict, the culmination of every dismissal, every laugh at my expense. Every year, I'd been expected to stay small. But then Dimitri turned his head toward his mother, speaking low in Russian. The words seemed harmless to anyone else, but my training made them flare like a red beacon. A sequence of numbers. The confirmation code, Oakland. The shipment we had been chasing across continents was being blessed right here, in the middle of Avery's fairy tale. He thought the language was a cloak. He thought wrong. I lifted my hand to the silver dog tag at my neck, fingers brushing the metal as if lost in nostalgia. To anyone watching, it was a nervous habit, a Marine remembering. In truth, my thumb pressed against the microtransmitter hidden inside, and my lips barely moved. Iron Raven. 2 words, soft enough to be drowned by violins, but powerful enough to split the night in half. The response came like thunder. Floodlights exploded across the vineyard, bleaching the fairy lights into irrelevance. The side doors of the ballroom slammed open. Agents surged through in disciplined formation, and the string quartet faltered into silence. Guests screamed, crystals shattered, chairs overturned as panic rippled through satin and sequins. Dimitri froze for a split second before 2 HSI agents drove him hard into the wall. His wrists twisted behind his back, steel cuffs clicking shut. His swagger drained in an instant, leaving only rage burning in his eyes. Avery stumbled, her veil catching on a chair, silk dragging through broken glass as she fell to her knees, mascara streaking down her cheeks. The dream she had cultivated shattered around her like the champagne tower collapsing in the corner. The crowd scattered, but my family sat paralyzed, their pride hollowed into shock. My mother's wineglass slipped from her hand, shattering against marble. My father's chest heaved, his face pale as parchment. Avery's cries echoed through the room, raw, hysterical, disbelieving. She reached toward me, fingers trembling, her voice cracking with betrayal. The lead agent stepped into the center, voice steady and commanding. He looked directly at me. "Captain Hale, confirmation." Every head turned. Every eye in that room, the guests, the officials, my parents, my sister, swiveled toward me. For the first time, I wasn't the shadow in the corner or the daughter overlooked at the dinner table. I wasn't nobody. I met the agent's gaze and gave a single, steady nod. The ballroom, once a stage for Avery's crowning glory, had become the place where the truth finally stood undeniable. I was not invisible. I was the Marine who brought the storm. The office of the Napa District Attorney was sterile and cold, lit by the unforgiving hum of fluorescent lights. On the table lay a stack of financial records and, on top, a single sheet that made my father's hands tremble. The mortgage contract. His signature sprawled across the bottom, binding our family home to Dimitri's investment. He stammered, his knuckles white against the edge of the chair. My mother sat rigid beside him, her face drained of color, as if the weight of appearances she had clung to all her life had finally cracked. Across from us, Carmen folded her hands, voice shaking as she confessed, drowning in debt. She had taken Dimitri's money and hidden the ledger in the speaker cabinet. The hard drive cataloged every dirty transfer, every shell company, every cent laundered through wine shipments. It was the nail in the coffin, the proof no lawyer could spin into innocence. Avery burst into tears, insisting she knew nothing, but the DA slid her phone across the table. On the screen were old messages from a friend warning her that Dimitri's deals smelled rotten. She had ignored them. She had chosen not to see. That night, in the glow of my laptop, an email appeared. The subject line, "Please." Avery's words spilled out in paragraphs, apologies tangled with excuses, begging me to forgive her, to believe she was blind, not complicit. I read only the beginning before my finger hit delete. Months earlier, when my mother whispered, "Please," into the phone, I had stayed silent out of duty and guilt. This time, my silence was different. No longer surrender, but boundary. I wasn't the daughter who swallowed pain anymore. I was the one who set the line and refused to let it be crossed. The air along the San Diego pier was damp with salt, the morning fog rolling low across the water. My shoes struck a steady rhythm against the boards. Breath even, lungs burning in the way that felt clean. The ocean's pulse matched mine,